Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I am literally just sat on the floor because my wheelchair's fucked up. Basically, if I tip it on its back, you can see that caster is a little bit loose in places that it shouldn't be. I don't know how you can see that, but yeah, it's basically an issue that I really need to fix. I was planning on doing a video about how to push around like using objects and things, but considering that I can't even push this thing without the wheel almost coming off, I feel like that's a little bit more important. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. This is probably going to be a voiceover video, just because I really need to concentrate on how I'm fixing this. Yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing that I needed to do was take off the wheel, and to do that I obviously need to prop it up, so I chose to just place the foot plate on my knee. Now this next part is quite tricky that I didn't think until after taking the wheel off, which we covered in the video about cleaning the wheels. But basically, I didn't think about how I was going to keep everything clean, you know, in just a path in the middle of wherever. So I took the wheel off and then just now started to think about it. So this is definitely something to consider if you're doing like an emergency repair in public. So first things first is keep a toolkit in your chair. I think this is something that I've covered quite a few times now on the channel, but also making sure that you keep everything in a spot where it's going to stay clean. You know, you don't want to be placing the wheels on like a pile of dirt or leaves or something. You want to try to keep everything as clean as possible. So what I did was just placed all the bearings and stuff on a pile leaning up against the wheel, but then I realised that wouldn't work, so I ended up moving it a couple more times. It ended up going on my foot after I tried to balance it like on the tripod for the camera. That's probably the first issue that I'd mention. Second issue to mention is that you probably won't have any cleaning grease or anything, so it's not that much of an issue if you do or don't have any. Just make sure that you're not going to be touching it too much, you know, touching any of your bearings, anywhere where there would be grease, because it's probably going to be a pain to wash off, and then it's also going to be a pain to re-grease everything. I was pretty lucky and didn't get that messy, but, you know, it is just something to keep in mind. Now, as you can see, this is the thing that needed to be tightened up, and I thought I'd give it a quick wipe down with just my fingers, because, again, I don't have anything with me to wipe it down with. But then again, we're not trying to get it perfect, since we are just doing this as, like, not quite a bodge. We do want it to be a good job, considering that we're going to be using it for as long as we can, but also because it's the wheels, they're going to get muddy again, like, as soon as I get back in the chair, so there's honestly not that much worry about getting it perfect. Still try and do your best to clean it, you might as well. And then this next bit is just tightening up the wheel again. You know, I needed to make sure that all the teeth, I don't know if I pointed out earlier, but all of the hinges on the top are going to line up in at least a good place for them being in equal position, because if they're not, it can cause a couple of issues with like one caster being slightly higher than the other caster. So definitely keep it in mind that the way you like angle each part does really matter. I went with like 3 clicks down on the teeth and then just tightened it up as much as I could. Now I do show you a little bit later, but I'm basically pressing the wheelchair up against my shoulder and then pulling on the Allen key, which kind of bent a little bit. I'm surprised by that. It was like kind of hard to show you guys, and I spent way too long trying to show you guys. The key it wasn't like a lot, but it is slightly noticeable. So that's kind of how tight I had to do it, because we did it like as tight as we could before, and then I obviously wanted to give it another check. And just to show you guys, obviously me putting it up against my shoulder, this is just a clip of that. But yeah, this is basically just all you're doing is taking off the wheel, finding this little bolt, and then tightening it up. At least that's what I did. And that's pretty much all there is to the wheel. There's a couple more parts on the top of the wheel, which aren't really as important to know. It's more about just making sure everything's lined up when you're like putting each screw in together, and just making sure that they aren't going to move while you're tightening the Allen key. So what I did after this was basically just do it up as tight as I could, gave it obviously a couple of checks, tried undoing it, and then redoing it up again just to see if it got stuck on anything. And then this is me just pointing out where I'm pressing the foot plate, obviously, as I was saying earlier, because I feel like, first off, it's a good angle for pulling it, but plus, when you're pulling it, an issue that I had was that the wheelchair would, like, lean over, so having the foot plate, like, pressed up against you means that you're pressing against the foot plate, which means that the chair can't fall over. The foot plate kind of gives you a rough idea of how much pressure you're putting into the Allen key, and then that's pretty much all you need. Now, obviously, for this bit, I could speed up for you guys, because it is literally just me fucking around trying to get this wheel on for ages, because I had to be careful where I was putting the wheel, obviously. I couldn't just place it on the floor, because as I was saying earlier about keeping everything clean, but I also had to deal with this issue of one of the bolts being slightly misaligned, and I'll show you guys a little bit later on. I'll show the camera, I believe. But the reason why I'm not going to speed it up is just to show you guys how long it does take, and also just kind of give you guys a bit of a rundown on other things that I was thinking, and like wanting to say during this. Just some like useful tips to keep in mind while you're like repairing your chair while out in like a public place or in a forest or something, is you can make use of people going by. Now, I like to be as independent as I can, and I am stubborn with that, so I probably wouldn't ask someone for help. But obviously, if you are struggling with things, and I know that if I was like having issues with repairing this and wasn't making a video or anything, I would have called someone over. There are a couple of people that walked past while I was making this video, in fact. But just being aware that if you are in a public space, you can always ask for help, rather than pressing the chair up against your shoulder, you could ask someone to hold the chair for you, or they tighten the Allen key for you. Or maybe if you have an idea on how to repair the chair, you could ask them to do everything that you tell them. And if you don't have as much use of your arms, or it's going to be a pain to transfer onto the floor, just know that there are options out there to help you if you can't do certain things. So, for example, if I didn't know as much about the chair, or I wasn't as confident taking it apart, I would ask someone like passing by, hey, would you mind helping me transfer onto the floor? I've got a bit of a dodgy wheel. Would you mind just sticking around and helping me? If they say no, don't force them, obviously. There'll probably be someone else that comes by later. If they say, no, I don't really know what I'm doing, you can say, I know what you need to do, I just can't do it, unless you're just being lazy, in which case, do it yourself. I think being able to do it is completely different from, like, doing it in the moment, like, knowing the theory and stuff does help, but if you wouldn't be able to physically do it, obviously it is important to get help. But, for example, if it was something a lot more major, like one of the back wheels was broken and you didn't know how to do a backwheel balance, if the front wheel was going to come off, in my situation where it was getting loose, it is definitely important to know what you're doing with the chair, and how to fix it, which is why I'm making these videos. Now, as you can see here, I'm just showing you guys the fact that the inner, like, bearings were slightly misaligned, so I had to get my Allen key in there to re-line it up. So what I was trying to do was get the Allen key in and press it up to make sure that it wasn't blocking the hole, because I couldn't fit the screw in, like, through the wheel. I could get it through the bearing, but then I couldn't get it through the wheel itself, which was quite an issue. So yeah, while I'm doing that, I'll just say, one of the, like, key things that I'd say to keep in mind while repairing your chair is knowing that help's out there, but also knowing, like, how to give the instructions on how to ask for help. You don't want people to just take apart your chair, make everything a load worse without knowing what they're doing. So definitely knowing what you're going to tell them. Have basic script in your mind. So my go-to saying is, excuse me, would you mind helping with my chair? A part of it's broken, or name the specific part. Would you mind just helping me? I'll explain everything, rather than just saying, my chair's broken, can you fix it? Or please, can you fix it? it definitely does help to show that you're a bit confident with it. And I feel that confidence that you feel, or you pretend to feel, even if you don't know what you're doing, will definitely help others to feel like they can do it a bit more, if that makes any sense. And I feel like if you are able to have everything under control, obviously don't try and fix your chair while you're in it. Always try and get out, whether or not that's on a bench or something. It's up to you. Now, I wanted to just see if everything was lined up properly, which is why I gave it the spin before adding on the nut, or the bolt, the nut, yeah, just to make sure everything was going to run smoothly, and I did clean it out properly and everything was in the right place. And I feel like that's also a good thing, is if you're, repairing your chair out in public, feel free to take as long as you need. You want everything to be to a good standard. If you just half-ass rush it, it's going to break again, and you're going to be in either a worse situation or in the exact same situation. So take your time, make sure that you're doing everything quick enough that you're going to be able to do it, obviously, quickly. It's an emergency repair, you're not, at home going and having a cup of tea, but do feel like you can take breaks. That is important. If you are by a coffee cafe thing, go grab a drink midway through, just take regular breaks if you need to. Obviously, if you can get by without doing any breaks, that is also good, that is great even, but also don't feel like you have to rush everything, and make sure that you're doing everything to a high enough standard for yourself. I don't know how well I'm describing this, but yeah, that's everything. Let's go to the outro. That is it for today's video, guys. I wasn't expecting to doing this video, if you can imagine. Basically, what happened was I had to do an emergency repair on my wheelchair. Not even a bit of an emergency one. A couple of days ago, like over the weekend, because one of the wheels was getting caught up. So we took everything apart, and one of the things that we took apart was the caster. We had to get like all the way up into the bottom of the wheel because it wouldn't spin. So what we had to do, we had to take everything apart, clean out the insides, and then put it all back together. But I don't think we tightened that back up enough. So it's like the caster frame wasn't on properly just now, and before it was clogged up. So I just had to clean that, not clean it, tighten it up. I had to take off the wheel, take off the caster. Obviously, I explained everything in this video, hopefully, editing me. But yeah, that is it. Do you know what? I will also, if I can remember, talk about emergency repairs just out and about, because this was in an okay situation. If I needed to, although the wheel would have probably fallen off, if I needed to, I could have just back wheel balanced home. I'm not that far away. I could have just like gone up and gone, so this was a pretty good situation. If I needed to, I could have just gone back home, done it in an ideal space. But I feel like it's kind of important to know like good places to do it. So I was a little bit further down this track, down towards the dirt path, before I realised that it was wobbling a lot. So what I did is I came back to the nearest part of clean-ish space that I could, i.e. this path where it's not a dirt track. I then found somewhere where I could lean things up to, the post that you're on now, as well as these posts here, if it will turn to see me. Hello? Yes? Hello? These posts right here. So yeah, that is why I chose here. It's because it's got places to lean things up against. As you saw in the video, it is kind of important that you have somewhere to do this, because you don't want to just get everything dirty, which will then mean worse situations later on. You need to obviously have your emergency toolkit on hand. I always keep mine with the chair. And yeah, that is all I will say now. I'll try and cover everything a bit more in detail during the video. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and bye.